I'm going to be held at the Lady of Lourdes, the Lourdes Church in Wellesley and Sherborne area on Sunday, and at the same time there's also one going on in Mississauga. And I am aware that they're talking about another plan to hold it in Scarborough, in a church in Scarborough. So, nandito na si Ricky. All right, just in time, Ricky, we're waiting for you. He brought some more food to eat. No liquid.
Ayun, kape.
Yeah. Ricky, we are just about ready to start, and we'd like to invite you here in front.
Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Good evening to everyone. And on behalf of the Community Alliance for Social Justice, the Kamalayan Youth Program, and the Philippine Press Club of Ontario, we would like to welcome you to this event, public forum on the issue of the Spratlys and the Philippines' natural wealth. There has been lots of news, lots of talks about, some even about the threat of war between China and the Philippines, and conflicts among different countries that are vying for this group of islands called the Spratlys. A lot of us may not know about the issue. There are those who remember the issue from the 70s, like me. Gusto ko ulit siyang pag-aralan, hindi ko na nga siya naaalala. So, CASJ, PPCO, and Kamalayan thought that we would have this forum to somehow get an update and refresh our memories regarding the issue of the Spratlys. The other thing also is that even as we are Filipinos abroad, even as we are migrants or immigrants, there is still that sense of national pride at saka yung ating patriotic sense natin, so that we care about things that happen in our country. So we have this forum. So for tonight, we will have our guest speakers who will deal on the different issues. But I will leave that to the moderators to introduce them. Meanwhile, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our Consul General Pedro Chan, our former Consul General Montesa, members of the Philippine Press Club, members of our youth, members of the youth organization, members of Migrante in Toronto. So welcome again to all of you.
Press Club and the University of Philippines Alumni Association of Toronto. Welcome everybody, and thank you very much for coming. This is indeed a very historic event in our community when we discuss a very important issue like the Spratlys in the Philippines. My co-moderator.
My name is Althea Balmes. I am from Kamalayan. We're a youth organization. We mostly deal with giving awareness to the youth in Filipino issues in the perspective of Filipino-Canadian youth. So shall we start the introduction for the guests?
Yeah, we have only one piece of paper because according to Ricky, he doesn't want to kill so many trees. So we are sharing this piece of paper. And if you notice, there's even something written on top of it. Forum, China versus the Philippines, big question mark. The Spratlys issue and Philippine natural wealth, 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Friday, August 19th, that's today. The first topic will be on the background on Spratlys and the legal aspects. It will be presented by Joe Rivera. He finished his LLB from Osgood Law School, Osgood Hall Law School. He is a blogger and a social commentator. He assists refugees, caregivers, and new migrants at the parish social ministry of Our Lady of Lourdes Church. Here's Joe. There he is.
And then the second guest would be Bern Hagunos. She will be talking about the foreign interest in extractive industries and Philippine natural wealth. Ms. Hagunos is the Asia Pacific Regional Coordinator. She's also part of the United Church of Canada, human rights advocate on mining and globalization. And we'll finish it off with Alex Felipe, who will be showing us images from the inside large-scale extractive industries in the Philippines. He's a photographer, also a coordinator of Kamalayan and Lakbayan. His photographs also won honorable mention awards in 2010 National Magazine, which was dealing with, his photographs was dealing with the Canadian miners in the Philippines.
Today's, undoubtedly today's hottest real estate in Asia, or maybe in the world, is the Spratlys Islands, a collection of small, desolate and uninhabited islands in uninhabited islands, reefs, coral rocks, and atolls in the South China Sea, most of which are submerged underwater during high tide. It was in the 1970s, as Ricky would recall, when the Spratlys became the focus of attention for several Asian countries whose coastlines straddle the South China Sea. There was some oil explorations conducted during that period which revealed that Spratlys may be lying on top of huge untapped oil and natural gas reserves. At present, 6 countries have staked out the respective claims. The People's Republic of China, Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. But the dispute over the sovereignty or ownership of the islands and other features of the Spratlys archipelago remains unresolved. Not a long time ago, before the 1970s, the Spratlys were known best as navigational hazards. Mariners were careful to steer clear from the island group designated as dangerous grounds in their maps and charts. Prior to the oil explorations in the 70s, the only natural resources the islands were thought to possess were guano, phosphate deposits, and abundant fish stocks, which led one writer to observe that to China, the value of Spratlys Island at that time was only worth the weight of its guano deposits. But not now, not anymore. These tiny specks of rocks have emerged as some of the most sought-after property in Asia after more major oil discoveries were made in the area surrounding the archipelago. In addition to the potential hydrocarbon wealth of the surrounding seabed, the Spratlys Islands are also attractive because of their strategic location. Situated in the middle of the South China Sea, the Spratlys Islands straddle major international and communication routes and connect the South China Sea with the Indian Ocean, East China Sea, and the Pacific Ocean. Just to stress the significant or strategic importance of the sea lane, it is a major route for the navies of the United States and Russia, oil tankers, merchant and marine vessels. Each year, approximately about 15% of the world's shipping and 70% of oil imported by Japan, Korea, China, and Taiwan passes through the South China Sea. The 6 countries which I've mentioned, which have staked their competing claims against the islands, each of them assert legal and historical arguments in support of their claims and have taken various steps to occupy some of the islands and features of the Spratlys archipelago. We'll go to each of these claims, and I'll try to analyze them as much as possible. But before that, I would like to present an overview of what the international, what is the customary international law insofar as making a determination of sovereignty over a territory in the ocean. At present, those claimant countries have made little progress toward a compromise, making the situation in the China Sea unstable and tenuous at best. There have been some military clashes before, But after the 1992 ASEAN agreement, they have now behaved properly, and each have made a commitment to peacefully settle the dispute among themselves. But to others, the situation could be a potential flux point, because armed conflict could have tremendous consequences, not only for neighboring countries, but for the entire world, which would probably be the reason why a group in the United States called the U.S. Pinoys for Governance and their representatives in Canada have picketed the Chinese consulate against what they perceive as Chinese bullying tactics in the South China Sea, and they are conducting a prayer for peace on Sunday. I would speculate that they are implying that there could be a military confrontation, military conflict in the region, which personally I don't believe will happen. I could only speculate that these groups may be motivated by the desire to make the United States be involved in the South China Sea, because most of the allies of the United States, like Australia, New Zealand, Korea, and Japan, have all been pressuring the United States to enter the fray in order to counterbalance the threat of Chinese hegemony in the region. Now let's go to the legal issue, which is at the heart of the dispute in the Spratlys Island. I could summarize it by saying, who owns the Spratlys? Who has sovereignty over the Spratlys Islands? Each of the claimants asserts a variety of arguments in support of their claims, ranging from historical evidence of discovery and occupation, and arguments based on international law principles. I'll review two pertinent cases in international law, which I believe are pertinent in understanding the dispute and in probably considering how we can determine who owns these islands. The first of these cases is called the Islands of Palmas case. It's a case decided by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in 1928. It set forth the factors necessary in establishing sovereignty over an island. The Palmas case concerned conflicting sovereignty claims between the United States and the Netherlands over an isolated but inhabited island somewhere between the Philippines and the former Dutch East Indies. The U.S. government claimed that Spain originally discovered Las Palmas, or the Palmas Island, and subsequently Spain ceded title to the United States under the Treaty of Paris when the Philippines became a colony of the United States. The United States also argued that Palmas was contiguous to the Philippines, and it was also part of the Philippine archipelago. On the other hand, the Netherlands claimed sovereignty based on the peaceful and continuous display of state authority over the islands. Palmas was inhabited by native peoples. The arbitrator awarded Palmas Island to the Netherlands and held that mere discovery of an island does not create sufficient sovereignty or title to the discoverer. It only creates an inchoate title, meaning a tentative or temporary title which needs to be perfected by a continuous and peaceful display of authority or some degree of occupation. That's what the Las Palmas ruling held, that even if a discoverer found an island, it's not sufficient to give that discoverer the right or title to the island. It must be followed by a continuous display of authority. In contrast, there is also the Clipperton case, the Clipperton Island case, which involved two conflicting sovereignty claims of France and Mexico over an uninhabited, this time it's an uninhabited atoll located off the coast of Mexico. France asserted that the French lieutenant claimed the island on behalf of the French government in 1858, while Mexico claimed ownership by way of cession from Spain. But the arbiter awarded Clipperton Island to France despite the absence of any positive and apparent act of sovereignty on the part of France. Arbitrators stated that Spain's discovery of the island had not been proven, and Mexico had not manifested its sovereign right over the island. Here we have two cases. One case which says that discovery is not enough, there must be a continuous display of authority. In other words, effectively an occupation or settlement. The other one is effective settlement is not necessary, as in the Clipperton case, which to me appears germane to the Spratlys Islands, because most of the islands and the features of the Spratlys archipelago are similarly isolated and uninhabited. These are mostly rocks underwater, atolls submerged underwater. A few islands over the water, but most of these features are underwater, and therefore they are uninhabitable. But higher standards for effective control must be applied with Spratlys Islands because of the number of claimants and the complexity of their claims. When such ambiguity exists, the International Court of Justice held that we need to look at actual displays of authority. In other words, effective and continuous display of authority over the island. Evidence of possession, not just mere discovery, and acquiescence or recognition by the other states of the exercise of sovereignty. These are three factors which are of decisive importance in determining sovereignty issues. But before we go to the territorial claims, let's go and look at the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Seas, which was adopted in 1982. Under the UNCLOS, a state exercising territorial sovereignty over an island may declare a territorial sea extending 12 nautical miles from its coastline. In other words, the Philippines has a territorial sea of 12 miles from its coastline. It has sovereignty of the controlling state. The sovereignty of the controlling state extends to the airspace above and the seabed and the subsoil below the territorial sea. But in addition, UNCLOS states that a controlling state may declare an exclusive economic zone, which is, in short, called the EEZ, which extends to 200 nautical miles from the island's baseline. Within the EEZ, the controlling state has sovereign rights over the natural resources located in the water, seabed, and subsoil of the island or territory. Remember what I've said. Sovereign rights in the water, seabed, and subsoil, not over the land formation, not over the island. So although the 1982 UNCLOS embodies customary law and practically governs every aspect of ocean management, it is of little impact in the Spratlys Islands because it fails to provide specific guidelines for determining maritime boundaries. The only guidance UNCLOS provides is that boundary disputes involving the continental shelf or exclusive economic zone shall be resolved by agreement on the basis of international law, meaning you have to look at what are the international conventions and custom, the general principles of law, and judicial decisions. Most international law experts or scholars on the law of the sea are in agreement that international boundary law as codified in the UNCLOS is indeterminate, that UNCLOS does not cover territorial disputes. As one legal scholar wrote, he says, while the law of the sea specifies the effect of islands on the ocean regime, it does not per se determine the legal status of the islands. Rights in maritime zones do not form the basis for claiming new territorial rights. It is not the waters which give title to the islands, but islands which confer rights to the waters. Now let's look at the conflicting claims of the competing states. Let's look at China. The Chinese claim all of the Spratlys Islands. They said that they have discovered the islands and used the islands since ancient times, which will go to as far as the Han Dynasty. They point to descriptions in Chinese history, books, maps, navigational records, and surveys as evidence that they had the earliest recorded contact with the Spratlys Islands. But the problem with that, with Chinese historical evidence is it's not conclusive proof of routine occupation. At most, it only it only presents a claim of inchoate title, as in the Las Palmas case. They may have discovered the islands, they may have the earliest record of contact with the Spratlys Islands, but they have never occupied and they have never exercised a continuous display of authority over the islands. So, based on the Las Palmas case, the Chinese claim lacks legal strength. And the Chinese also failed to include the Spratlys Island in the 1928 official chart of Chinese territory. It could be one weakness in the Chinese claim. But just like the other claimants in the Spratlys Islands, China has made efforts to occupy some of the features of the archipelago, building military fortifications, artificial structures even on top of reefs submerged under the sea. And they could probably argue that since they have built structures and they have sent the troops to guard those islands and features, that they have exercised a continuous display of authority. That can be argued. Taiwan's claim is essentially based on China's claim, which is also based on historical discovery and use of the islands in the ancient times. In addition, Taiwan claims that when the Japanese invaded Hainan Island, the partial islands, the Spratly Islands, were placed under Taiwan's jurisdiction. In 1946, Taiwan attempted to establish a garrison on Ituaba, the largest island in Spratlys. But it was forced to withdraw when China took over Hainan Island. Taiwan did not occupy the Spratlys again until 1956, when it reestablished a garrison in Ituaba. Again, just like the Chinese claim, Taiwan's claim suffers from some weaknesses, which can be attributed to unconvincing and intermittent proof of occupation and effective display of authority. But with regards to Ituaba, Taiwan may have a strong claim because it has continuously occupied the island since 1956. Then let's take Vietnam. Vietnam also based its claim upon historical evidence, both before and after the French occupation. Vietnam claims ownership to the entire Spratly, that it succeeded France's claim when Vietnam was granted independence. But the problem with that claim is that Vietnam did not succeed France's 1933 claim. So there is a misrepresentation there. And also the North Vietnamese government in 1956 and 1958 made statements supporting China's claim to the Spratlys. But despite those weaknesses, Vietnam has maintained garrisons on 22 Spratly features in 1970s, mostly, again, submerged underwater during high tide. I hope you're getting a picture now of what these islands and the features would look like. They're mostly underwater. The Philippines. The Philippines claims most of the Plus Islands based on the theory that the islands were terra nullius, when a Filipino lawyer and businessman by the name of Tomas Cloma discovered them in 1947. Terra nullius means a territory belonging to no one at the time of the alleged occupation. The Philippines also contends that the Spratly Islands were terra nullius, it belonged to no one after the 1951 San Francisco Peace Treaty Conference. But then there could be a weakness in that kind of argument, because after the 1951 San Francisco Peace Treaty Conference, peace treaty was signed between the Japanese and the Allies, it could be argued that the Spratly Islands were placed under de facto trusteeship to the Allies. And therefore, there must have been some, there are owners, and these islands may be owned by a group, such as the Allies. When Thomas Cloma discovered the unoccupied islands in the Spratly Islands, he named the islands Kalayaan, Freedom Land, and appointed himself chairman of the Supreme Council of the Kalayaan State. He was doing it on his own, on his individual. It was on an individual basis. He wasn't doing it on behalf of the government. he was acting on himself. In international law, independent territorial claims of private individuals are not equivalent to government claims unless the individual is acting on the authority of the government or the government asserts jurisdiction over the individual. But that has been taken care of because in 1976, President Marcos issued a presidential decree adding Kalayaan as a territory of the Philippines. And there is now a mayor of Kalayaan, which is a municipality under Palawan. It might be that Cloma discovered the island and acted on its own individually, but later on it was turned over to the Philippine government, and now the Philippine government has added it as part of its territory. The Philippines also claimed the Spratlys Islands based on the argument that it's part of its archipelago. But the problem with that argument is that in the continental shelf of the Philippines, there exists what we call a Palawan Trough. It's a distinct and deep feature of the Philippine continental shelf that separates the Spratlys Islands from the Philippine archipelago. So it's hardly, therefore, part of the Philippine archipelago. With the adoption of the 92 UNCLOS, the Philippines added the argument that the Spratlys Islands are within its EEZ, its exclusive economic zone. But remember what I've said earlier, that the EEZ gives rights to a state over the use of the resources in the water, on the seabed, on the subsoil. But it does not give sovereign rights over the island in an ocean. And lastly, we have read about the claim by the Sultanate of Sulu that Spratlys form part of its ancient domain. But again, this is very recent, and there is no evidence of actual continuous authority by the islands in order to be consistent to meet the PALA's standard. Now, Malaysia. Malaysia claimed 12 features of the southern portion of the Spratlys Islands. Malaysia contends that the islands are located on its continental shelf. It asserts that under UNCLOS, continental shelf provisions allow a coastal state to exercise sovereignty over islands on its continental shelf. Again, this is a misguided and a misinterpretation of the UNCLOS provision. While the UNCLOS allows a coastal state to control the resources of its continental shelf, there is nothing in the UNCLOS provisions that says that it grants sovereign rights to a coastal state over islands located on its continental shelf. And besides, Malaysia's claim is fairly recent compared to China, Taiwan, and Vietnam. And of course, it's challenged by the other countries. And other countries also control several features claimed by Malaysia. But Malaysia has occupied a number of features of the archipelago and therefore may possess more legal strength under the PALMA standard. Now the last claimant, Brunei. Brunei claims Louisa Reef and Rifleman Bank, both located in the southern portion of the Spratlys Islands, based on the argument that these features are located on the extension of the continental shelf. But Rifleman Bank appears to be, the claim that it's part of the continental shelf appears inconsistent with the UNCLOS because of the East Palawan Trough, which separates Rifleman Bank from Brunei and terminates the natural prolongation of Brunei's continental shelf. It may be that Brunei may have a claim on Louisa Reef, which is a submarine feature. It's submerged under the water. And under the UNCLOS, it may have rights to explore and exploit the resources, since it is a submarine feature. But the problem is Malaysia claims and occupies Louisa Reef. If we evaluate all the claims of these 6 different countries in the Spratlys Islands, we can only come to a conclusion that all the sovereignty claims of these countries is weak. The evidence presented by China, Taiwan, and Vietnam in support of the historical claims is unconvincing and sparse. It merely illustrates the country's intermittent contact and brief occupation of the islands. But likewise, the claims of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei suffer from factual weaknesses and legal misinterpretations. So how do we resolve this conundrum? Who owns this owns these islands, or sovereignty of the islands, and how can it be settled? Do you go to UNCLOS or do you go anywhere? China, when it ratified the UNCLOS, was under obligation to identify the means of settlement that it will choose in settling a dispute under the UNCLOS. But it never did. There are 4 ways. You can go to the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea, you can go to the International Court of Justice, or you can go before an arbitration, or you can go before a special arbitral tribunal. But in the absence of a prior choice of the means by which to settle disputes regarding maritime boundaries and territorial disputes, a nation would have to surrender to binding arbitration. But the problem is, no one is willing to go to a binding arbitration because no one is willing to risk a decision which might be found unfavorable to their claim. In concluding my talk on this background and legal issues, I would like to offer 3 proposals. Insofar as the Spratlys Islands are concerned, and number 2, insofar as the patrimony of the country over its natural resources, and again, also in reference to its patrimony over natural resources. I'll discuss these 3 issues very quickly.
Sorry, we will be running out of time.
This will be very, very quick. The Philippines could pressure the ASEAN to hold multilateral talks between the competing states because no one would like to give in. There is a stalemate. They can explore the idea of a joint development zone. This has been done before. This is nothing new. This has been done in the Arctic Ocean. This has been done in the Antarctic Ocean. And lately it has been done in the peace treaty between Timor, East Timor, and Australia over a disputed continental shelf between Australia and East Timor on the Timor Sea. What they can do is agree to an exploitation of the natural resources of Spratlys Islands, suspend or set aside the sovereignty issues or claim temporarily, but benefit from the exploitation by agreeing to an allocation of the benefits to each claimant state based on the permanent economic interest of the territorial sovereignty claim. I think this can be done. It all depends on the political will. And second one is Mampalaya. Mampalaya is a deep water gas to power project off the coast of Palawan, which is in the Spratlys Island, which is also part of the territory being claimed by China. But if Noy is serious to claim that what is ours, he should start with Mampalaya. The Mampalaya project is unconstitutional. Under the Constitution, any exploration or exploitation of natural resources by foreign corporations is limited to an investment of capitalization of 40%. But the Mampalaya project is divided between 3 groups, 45% to Shell, 45% to Texaco, it's amounting to 90% to foreign corporations, and 10% to PNOC. The project is now operational. It's supplying power to 3 hydroelectric plants in Batangas. And even the governor of Palawan is bragging that they have now enjoyed the benefits from the payment of royalties on the project. The last thing is the Benham Rise. It's another region which is off the coast of Isabela and Quezon, as big as the island of Luzon. The Philippines is claiming that it is part of its continental shelf. It has been found out that it could be a rich reservoir of methane gas. So if the Philippines is really serious in asserting its patrimony over its resources, start Mampalaya and start with the exploration of Benham Rise in the coast of Quezon and Isabela. Those are my 3 suggestions, and that's my presentation on the Spratlys Island.
About foreign interests in extractive industries and Philippine natural wealth. By the way, I have a cold, so if I choke along the way, pardon. I leave it to the organizers and probably to the facilitators to make the link between the Spratlys issue and the presentation that I'm doing. I'd like to start up mainly. I will be speaking actually about mining as part of the extractive industry. I will not touch on oil and gas because I'm not familiar with that. So my presentation will be mainly the foreign interest in mining industries in the Philippines and question of national sovereignty. Now, let me see where is the up and down here. Where is page up and page down? Okay. Okay, good. Let me start with a relevant basic information. The land resource of the Philippines is a total land area of 30 hectares, alienable and disposable lands of 14+ million hectares, and forest lands of about 15 million hectares. The Philippines is one of the 17 countries with the richest biodiversity, 52,000 species, half of them only found in the Philippines. The Philippines is also part of what we call the Pacific Ring of Fire. And this is what it looks like. Okay, it starts from South Africa, or starts whatever you want to start, in the Oceania, all along Southeast Asia, East Asia, North America, down to South America. It is a zone of continuous volcanoes that is in constant activity, and this volcanic activities produces mineral deposits. And so the Philippines is one of the richest countries in the world with the highest mineral deposits as part of that ring of fire.
Excuse me, is your figure correct? Total land area is only 30 hectares?
Oh, 30 million, sorry. 30 million. Okay, sorry about that. On the other hand, the Philippines is also the 8th of 10 top countries that is most vulnerable to weather-related events and risk of climate change. It is prone to, typhoons, landslides, floodings, volcanic eruptions, and other activities. Since 1992 or the early 1990s, the Philippine government has been actively and aggressively liberalizing, pushing the policy of liberalizing the mining industries. It looks at the corporate mining, large-scale mining by foreign corporation as the key to economic growth and the solution to poverty. Let me check my notes. Also, in 1992, the Philippine Mining Act was promulgated, was passed under the presidency of Fidel Ramos. But it is noted that it was then Senator Gloria Arroyo who actually introduced the bill in the Senate, the Philippine Mining Act of 1992. And the Philippine Mining Act is principally, the main purpose of the Philippine Mining Act is to attract foreign corporation, mining corporation, to invest and to come in the Philippines. And so, expectedly, a lot of the provisions in the Philippine Mining Act are made attractive and cater to the interest of foreign mining corporation. Some of these are found, these are some of the provisions of the Philippine Mining Act, which are made very attractive to foreign mining corporation. It offers, one of the provision is 100% foreign ownership of mining lands, not mining project, mining lands, mineral lands, which is given to the mining corporation as concessions. This is actually an exemption or a challenge as a violation of the Philippine Constitution 1987 provision that restricts ownership of land and corporation to 40%, and foreign companies are not able to own land. And so this provision has actually been challenged as anti-constitutional. Another provision of the Mining Act is the 100% repatriation, return of profits to the countries where these foreign companies come from, as well as 100% return of equipment and investments. Guarantee against state expropriation. The Act also reduced excise duties from 5% to 2%, offers tax holidays, and deferred payments until investments have been all recovered. The government also, under this Act, is committed to ensure removal of all obstacles to the mining activities. And these obstacles can include the settled communities that are in the mining concessions, as well as farming and other livelihood activities that are in the concession areas. It offers priority access to water resources and all the resources within the concessions given to the mining company. It also gives the right to the companies to sell gold directly to the international market without intervention from the central bank. Following the passing of the Philippine Mining Act, there had been an influx of foreign mining corporations to mine or explore in the Philippines. We can see this in the figures that are there. In 1995, when the Philippine Mining Act was passed, there were 262 mineral production sharing agreements. By the year 2010, there is now 702 approved mining tenements covering more than 1 million hectares and over 2,100 applications for mining exploration. So there has been an exponential increase in activities, mining activities of foreign corporations in the Philippines. The graphs or the maps from the government's bureau, Mines and Geological Science Bureau, actually shows the extent of this concern. This is a map of Zamboanga, the Zamboanga region. And the colored parts are the areas that are covered either by mining activities, mining operation, and mining applications, or under exploration. And so this area is not uninhabited. It is inhabited. And yet, it is farmed, it is where people are doing their livelihood activities, and yet these areas are covered by application or operation or exploration of mining companies.
Lahat siya o yung pula lang?
All of that colored areas. The different colors, it's because there are some that are already operational, some have approved permits, or some are still under exploration.
Is it the red one?
Everything, the whole color.
Yeah, because
All the
there
covers.
are
The
white
differences in
areas
colors
there.
are because some are actively operational already, some have already mining permits, and some. Okay, we don't have the time, so let's do that. And this is Surigao, Agusan, and that area. The same thing, you can see where mining activities or prospective mining activities will be made. In the Cordillera regions, 66% of the total land area of 1.8 million hectares are covered by mining activities, either exploration or application. Okay? And in Mitsalip, which is a town, 70 of its 75 barangays are under application for mineral exploration by 7 mining companies. So you can see the extent of the influx of mining companies in the Philippines, mostly foreign mining companies, including Canadian. Canadian mining companies is one of the 4 major mining companies in companies in the Philippines. A major concern of this mining issue is foreign interference. The World Bank had been, over many years, at least 20 years, has been aggressively encouraging, promoting the liberalization of the mining industries. And it was a major actor in the creation of the 1995 Mining Act. It has been, since that time, also actively during the Arroyo presidency, as well as the present presidency administration. It continues, the World Bank continues to press for the continued and even more liberalization of the mining industry. There were administrative and executive orders under the Arroyo government, which actually liberalized the mining industry broader than the Philippine Mining Act of 1995. The multinational corporations have been also active in the creation of the Mining Act. They were invited to assist in the drafting of the Mining Act of 1995. There are concerns about pressure not only in the executive, in the administration, but also on the judiciary. In 2004, the Supreme Court ruled that a provision, the Philippine Mining Act, was unconstitutional. One of the contention, as I have said, is the provision in the Mining Act, which is the 100% ownership of corporations and land ownership. And so there was a group from Mindanao that filed a complaint and asked the Supreme Court to rule that the act is unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court decided in favor of this group. However, 10 months or 11 months after, the Supreme Court reversed its own decision. And later, the House leader, Jose de Benicia, mentioned during his tour overseas that he, as House leader, led in the pressuring of the Supreme Justices in making the reversal of the Supreme Court. So you can see that there has been there are concerns, the reason for the concerns that the judiciary, in fact, is also getting some pressures to liberalize, to make the liberalization of the mining corporation continuing. There is a link also between foreign debt and the liberalization of the mining industry. If you remember, when former President Marcos left, the Philippines was left with a huge foreign corporation. And the World Bank has been pushing for the liberalization of, among the conditions that the World Bank has pushed for the restructuring of the debt payment as well as for new loans, was the liberalization of major industries, key industries in the Philippines, including the mining industry. Actually, this is not the only industry that the World Bank has been pressing for liberalization. During the time of Marcos, the World Bank actually also pushed for the liberalization of the forestry, the forestry industry. And so there was, like mining now, it was forestry and logging before, corporate logging and corporate extraction of the country's forestry. And the result of that was that by the 1990s, only 6% of the original forest have been left. So right now, only 6% of the country's forests are left as a result of the logging. And many fear that the liberalization of mining will also result to the same thing.
Sorry,
Okay. So anyway, one concern is, of course, loss of national sovereignty over the land and natural resources of the country, as well as foreign intervention. The question also of impact on the people, who benefits, and what are the costs. As I said, the reason that the government has been pushing for the liberalization of the mining industry is that it is seen as it considers corporate mining as an engine for growth and alleviation of poverty. But has it delivered? It has promised to deliver this. You can see that in the figure. In 2007, the gross production of mining industry was 101 billion pesos, but the collection by government was only a meager 5 million pesos. The contribution of mining industry to the national GDP is only 1.3. So mining as an engine for growth has not been delivered. The key reason for the failure to deliver the economic gains are found in the Mining Act. The incentives given to foreign mining companies, tax holidays, and full repatriation of profits, and the lack of enforcement even of provision in the mining companies. For example, the government has not been collecting the royalty, 5% royalty from the mining companies. On the smaller level, on the community level, the mining industry has a low capacity or ability for job creation. If you go to mining companies, many of the employees or workers are from outside the community. Why? Because the community does not have the required skills for the work in the mines. As one international organization said, corporate mining is synonymous with persistent poverty, not prosperity at the community level. On the other hand, it is the communities where these mining activities are taking place that pays the cost of the mining activities. One of the costs, the environmental damage, and I think Alex will speak about that. Marinduque, Alex will show a picture of that. The mining in Marinduque, where Placer Dome, the Canadian company Placer Dome, dumped its tailings for 30 years into the sea, and in 1995 was involved in the biggest tailings spills in the country ever since, destroying crops and properties of the community, and later on left the country without proper cleanup and compensation of those who lost properties. Militarist mining activities are preceded and accompanied by militarization under the guise of counterinsurgency, but in fact is to facilitate the activities of the mining companies without hindrance. It is followed by human rights violation. For example, in Mindoro, the pattern of extrajudicial execution was started when Crew Development, a Canadian mining company, faced the opposition, major opposition from the from the communities, led by Palparan. The extrajudicial killings started there. Indigenous peoples are among the worst, among the most affected. It happens that the mining companies, the mining activities are mostly in indigenous people's territories. I'll not speak about that because I don't have the time. So that's where I'll end. And I think Alex.
Where the Spratlys are. We all know Palawan sticks out like this, right? Coming out of the Philippines, it points towards Borneo. Borneo's here. Yes? The Spratlys is right here. So Palawan sticks out this way. Borneo's here. Spratlys are here. China, Vietnam, Indonesia's down here. Malaysia is part of Borneo. That part of, Malaysia's part of Borneo. This part of Borneo is Indonesia. All right, so that's where the Spratlys are. Secondly, let's do some linkages. So why are we putting together this, the issue about the Spratlys with mining? Because this is really pretty much the same topic. This is about extractive industries. So extractive industries are things like oil, gas, and minerals. And with these topics, this is coming together right now through, this is becoming an issue right now because people are talking about how the Spratlys is important because it's an issue of national patrimony, right? It's an issue of patriotism. This belongs to the Philippines is one of the issues that people are talking about. Second thing people are talking about is that the Spratlys has oil. If we had this oil, the Philippines would have more money. It would help alleviate poverty. These are the two main issues that I hear in the newspapers and online all the time. And what we're trying to show you today is that it's not that simple. So I'm going to start now with some of the pictures that I've taken. And we're going to start with Marinduque, which Tita Byrne talked a little bit about before. And these are photos I took at the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. And when I arrived there, the island of Marinduque is just south of Luzon. This is the home of Placer Dome, which is was a Canadian company, in conjunction with Marcopper, the Philippine side of it, which is the Marcos-owned mining company. And when I got there, I visited the different areas that were affected by the mine. And in the north side of Marinduque, there's an area called Calangcan Bay. And in Calangcan Bay, it's an area of fishers, so the people there live off fishing. And this is the site that Tita Byrne was talking about, where they dumped toxic tailings into the water 24 hours a day for 15 years. This was done legally, because it was allowed by the Marcos government. So you can see pipes running into the ocean. Actually, I'll wait till there are pictures, and I'll show you that. And the title of this presentation, this part of this presentation, is called The Snow from Canada, because this was a Canadian company, And like I said, they dumped toxic tailings into the ocean for 15 years, 24 hours a day. And what would happen during the dry season is that these tailings would be very dry, and the wind would pick them up, sweep them into the sky, and drop them onto the village. And the villagers called this their snow from Canada. So as Tita Byrne said, the Philippines is very rich with minerals. It's the second largest for its land area when it comes down to gold. And Canada, on the other hand, right here in Toronto, out of the TSX, 75% of the world's mining companies are based out of here. Oh, that was on the next slide. And Canada, as of right now, only relies on voluntary standards of good behavior. There have been a couple bills that they tried to pass. It didn't really happen. The latest one was C-300, which was just last year. I'll go over this we'll just glance at because Tita Byrne talked about this already. They talk about how this is going to end poverty. The bringing in more mining is going to help alleviate poverty in the Philippines. Tita Byrne already showed you this is not the case. The Philippine Mining Act allows for 100% ownership. It allows for 100% repatriation of profits. All of this does not really help with the alleviation of poverty. And let's cut off a little bit. So Placer Dome operated there from the 50s till 1996. It made profits of about $25 million. It was the site of three major environmental and human rights disasters. The one being the dumping of toxic waste on Calangcan Bay for 15 years. And then there are two major freshwater rivers. Both of those rivers had mine tailing accidents in the 90s. So first one river tailing dam broke, and then, oops. And then the next one broke a few years later. And we'll see examples of that now. So we're going to start with Calangcan Bay. Remember, it's an area of fishers. So they dumped here for all that 24 hours a day for 15 years. And when I went to visit there, you could still see the effects of this on the people, mostly on the children. So heavy metal poisoning is a major issue there. In 1998, so remember this happened all the way till 1996. In 1998, they tested 59 children, only 59. The Philippine government tested 59 children. All of them were shown to have heavy metal poisoning. And this is a slow poisoning, right? This is lead, arsenic, whatever. It seeps into you through drinking water, through the air, breathing in the toxins. And it also comes in through the skin if you have any cuts and you're walking over mine tailings. Oh, and you could see here that 2 children were killed. Sorry. Why did it skip ahead so fast? Oh, it's just going one ahead. Before we get to the pictures, I guess, you can see that the Mogpog River is one of the rivers where there was a spill on the dam. 2 kids were killed immediately then, and their parents were paid $22 each in compensation. Boak River was in the other major spill. This was in 1996. 3.4 million tons of mine waste spilled into their freshwater river. So there are only 2 rivers. Remember, this is where all their water comes from. And so this is the Boak River here. This is the Boak River here. Kids are still playing it. People are fishing in it. People eat what's coming out of this. So pretty much the entire... Why were there no photos in this? Okay, hold on. Let me find the photos. I don't know. And so you can see that even in this area... Hold on. It's hard to talk and look for stuff. 1 sec. Go here. We'll go right into mining. There we go. Si Migalis, di ba? Okay, so this is the Boak River here. Basically what happened there, so remember, millions of toxic waste spilled into the water when the dam broke. What the mining company and the government did to resolve this problem is they basically made work. They hired 1 person from each family that lived along the affected areas and gave them a job. That job is to walk into the spilled river and shovel out the toxic waste and dump them into sandbags and lay those sandbags on the edge of the river. And you can see that and they didn't do anything. They just laid it out on the side of the river. So over the years, this has been over a decade now, those sandbags have eroded and the toxic waste is back in the river again. So this is the river there. You could see this is during the wet season. It just finished raining. This is not the way wet sand looks. Yes. And so they're building houses out of it. They live right next to it. This is the farm field that hasn't been used since the dam broke in 1996. So you can still see the remnants of a home there. Kids are playing in it. This is the Boac River. I'll just go fast because I want to show a few. This is an island of fishers. This is in Kalankan Bay. So they're still fishing in this area. Unfortunately, they're not able to sell their wares anywhere. So they're pretty much, they're not able to sell them outside of the area. They're basically catching it themselves and they're selling it to their own community. And you can see that when you go to visit this area, you can really see it in the children. The children are fastest affected by heavy metal poisoning. They're still young. And you can see there are a lot of birth defects in the area. This is a young man with mental difficulties. There are a lot of swollen limbs, and you can see like scars, scabbing on a lot of people. We'll get to that in a sec. It's in the right order, unfortunately. I don't know why the other one didn't have it. So this guy here lost his legs to it. Let's find the one where you can see his legs. So this guy, he's about 33. When he was a child, he used to play in the sludge where the pipes used to bring the toxic waste into Kalankan Bay. And he used to say that he didn't know that this was toxic waste. No one knew that it was toxic waste. He just thought it was interesting sand, interesting mud. And him and his brother used to play there, have like snowball fights. And since he was a kid of a fisher, his feet used to always get cut up. Right? And so since your feet get cut up, you're walking in toxic sludge, it enters your bloodstream, and over time it creates a buildup of heavy metals in your blood. And he lost his legs. You can see, eventually we'll get to the picture, there it is. He has these open wounds that never heal. His hands are basically split open. His one heel, he lost one leg. His one heel has a gaping hole, but that big, just filled with pus. And this is just the effects that you can see. This is not something that happens to you immediately. I was here for a week. I ate their food. I drank their water. I walked in toxic sludge. This is not something that happens immediately. This is something that takes time. You have to live in this area. You have to continuously be exposed. There you go. This child here, Maria Pigafetta, I forgot her last name. Anyways, she was born with microcephalus. She's one of the many children that I met there that were born with birth defects. She died in 2009. I heard from Mining Watch went to go back in 2009. She died in 2009. But when I visited her, she was 6 years old, and she was this big. She was smaller than her 4-year-old brother. And yeah, so you can see the children have a lot of open wounds. You usually see that pretty much all the children had these wounds that never went away on their legs, which is the first sign of heavy metal poisoning. And this is on the dump site on Kalankan Bay. So like I said, pipes went into the bay, dumped toxic waste 24 hours a day for 15 years, and it created a 15-kilometer stretch of artificial land. So a bay is like this, right? Water, land, and it basically made like a straight line of artificial land, 15 kilometers long. That 15-kilometer stretch is now only 9 kilometers because the 6 kilometers have eroded into the ocean. And this is that land there. What they tried to do here is they tried to do a make-work project here as well. They hired one person from every family, brought them some trees, and told them to go plant some trees on the toxic waste. Obviously, trees don't grow on toxic waste. But this created a feeling of utang ng loob towards these people, and so they found it hard to blame anyone because they were given jobs. And that's it there. So you see how it goes straight into the land and just sticks straight out into the ocean. And there's the fissures. You can see it eroding away back into the ocean. And there you go. Those are the pipes. So yeah, so those pipes went directly from the mine site and out into the area. How much time do I have there? 10 minutes? Okay, I'll show a different area. Any questions while I'm on that? While I'm trying to find other things? I'll show Didipio. No, I will show, instead, let's watch. Here,
Nobody stopped you, Alex, taking the picture?
Did they stop me in this area?
Yeah.
This area, no. This area has been closed. In Marinduque, the mine has been officially closed since 1996, but it's officially closed in the sense that it's just closed. The equipment is still there. The area is still guarded. There's still an actual guard at the area, and it was still, as of that time, which was late 2007, early 2008. As of that time, it was still on the 25 priority mining list of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. All right, I'll show you these ones. So I showed you the Marinduque one to talk about the poverty issue, right? So the issue with the Spratlys is talking about how if there's oil there, it will help with poverty. The photos and also the presentation Tita Byrne gave shows you that there is no direct link between extractive industries, like large-scale extractive industries, and the alleviation of poverty because of the way the laws of the Philippines are, because of the way the Mining Act is. And this is also the same with oil, very similar, as we can use with the example Tito Joe used about the industry in Palawan, Mampalaya, right? With Mampalaya, it's only 90% of that is being owned by Shell and what was the other half? Sorry? Texaco. And Texaco. And only 10% of that goes to the Philippines. And so it's very, very similar to what's happening with the Mining Act here. And that's why we're trying to show this, because this is one of the major points. It's trying to say that, poverty will be alleviated. But we just have to look at the other industries that are parallel to oil. And we can see that this is not the case. Well, obviously, it could be the case, but the way the Philippine system is right now, it just isn't going to happen. So I'm going to use Rapu-Rapu as an example of an island, a small island. Marinduque is a fairly large island. Rapu-Rapu is a very, very small island of fishers. This is off Albay province. Oh, one last thing about Marinduque I forgot to say. Marinduque is also one of the poorest of the Philippine provinces. So this is a place with a mine for almost 50 years. And it's what? It's within, there's 70-odd provinces, and it's on the bottom 10 of the provinces. So Rapu-Rapu is a tiny place off Albay. It's an area of fishers. And this is owned by an Australian company. It was owned by Barrick Gold. It was sold to Lafayette Mining Corp, which is now an Australian company. And they had a spill of toxic tailings there in 2005, which they said they improved. And then when I visited in late 2007, there was another spill of chemicals into the water. A lot of fish ended up being washed ashore. And I went there with a science team from Ateneo University, and they want to test the water. They wanted to speak to the fishers, etc. So when I got there, the fish kill happened in October, and I was there in November. So about 2 weeks after the fish kill, I arrived. So when we arrived in November, the fishermen were still not fishing, and the people were all dependent on handouts. So the food that they were eating were all coming from the church, and handouts, and they would all go to the church. It's a tiny island. They would all go to the church and be fed from the church. So these are the fishermen that are working there. I spoke to some of them. This is one of the quotes that he gave me. So he said that this was a peaceful area. There was no killing or thieves here. No thieves until the mine came. Said in Tagalog, obviously, but translated for a Canadian audience. So I went there with the science team of Dr. Regis of Inicar from Ateneo. So this is her team. This is inside the mine itself. And Tita Byrne talked about employment, jobs within these areas. This is a major point because one of the things that people talk about all the time is that mines will bring jobs. And I visited 4 or 5 mines in the Philippines, and the most striking thing that came to me visually was how it was deserted. It felt empty. Because as a photographer, I'd looked at a lot of mining pictures, and the pictures that came to my mind were the coal mines in Brazil. If everyone's ever seen those pictures, you've got like 10,000 people carrying coal up ladders, and it was a crazy, messy sight of people. But when I went to these mines, it was almost empty. You'd see like a truck here, a backhoe there, maybe one guy with a clipboard walking around, and it was virtually empty. I went to another site as well, which we won't have time to look at, in Zamboanga Province, Toronto Ventures Incorporated mine at Mount Kanatuan. And that mine used to be like a small-scale mine owned by the local villagers. And there were 10,000 people working there at that time when it was owned by the people. And then when the Canadian mine moved in, it ended up it cleared everyone out, displaced the people. It forced all the villagers off the mountain where the gold was, and they only employed, I think, 800 people. So there's if the argument there is jobs, you can see right there 10,800. That's a pretty big difference. So you can see in these pictures how empty, right, the mine is. All those people there are just people that are part of the science team, except for the guy in orange or green. So it's dead empty. So the mine people brought us around to show us how clean their output is of the tailings. So they first brought us to the place they wanted to show us, where they spilled toxic chemicals into the ocean in 2005. And they said, look, pH is 7, neutral, right? So it's great. It's perfect. We're doing very well. We insisted we wanted to go to other places as well. They refused, so we just did it anyway. And when we did, we found other places where the acidity was about pH 2.5, pH 2.1, and around that area. So you can see there's a pretty big difference between what the mine wants you to know and what's actually going on. So this is some of the clean water that's exiting out into the ocean. So you can see by the color that there is something wrong, right? This is called acid, what's it called? Acid mine, I can't remember. Tita Byrne, where are you? Acid something. Here it is. Acid mine drainage. Oh, obvious. It's called acid mine drainage. It causes the discoloration of the water because of the heavy metals in the water itself. So there, as we went into the mine, because you have to enter the mine by water, like you have to take a bangka from one end of the island around to the other end to enter the mine. And you could see that along the way there was about 7 of these outlets where the tailings water went back into the ocean. And you can see on all those outlets this heavy gold coloration. And at that time when I arrived there was a lot of people in the hospitals, and at the time that I got there, 2 weeks after it happened, there was 1 death. So these are the fishermen that aren't fishing.
5 more minutes?
Yes. Pardon me? Oh, 5 minutes. I'll go quickly. This is the end. So this is one mother who, her family was so hungry, her children were so hungry that while she and her husband were not home, the kids just picked shells from the side of the beach and cooked them up themselves and ate those, and they were all hospitalized. Those are the 3 kids. This is one of the kids that ate fish because she was hungry, and then she was hospitalized as well. And despite it all, some fishermen are still, there was a small group of fishermen that were still going out. They said they were going out far enough that the fish were safe. So they were still fishing far enough away that it was safe, and this was being shipped to Manila. So some of this fish was going outside of this area at that time. And I think we'll keep it at that for now, just so we can have more time for questions. So the whole point that I'm trying to show is that, you know, you read in the paper about the Spratlys, they talk about how it's going to help with poverty, but if we just compare it to its parallels, it doesn't look good. They talk about how it's about national patrimony, it's about how this is our land that's being invaded. But we can just look at its parallels, and we can see that 100% ownership, 100% repatriation of profits, it's basically the same thing, except it's not big bad China, it's our friends, Canada, Britain, the United States, etc. And we can see that linked to all this, if I show the other slides, we can see there's a lot of militarization involved. And this links again to another of the calls to the Spratlys, that, you know, trying to invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty with the United States, signed after World War II. And you can see in this way that there's something suspicious happening here, because the United States is still in the Philippines. You know, there's the Visiting Forces Agreement that's in the Philippines right now. I went in 2009, I was there. I visited Bicol at the beginning of the Balikatan exercises. There was about 6,000 American troops that were due to arrive. And just before they arrived, the AFP, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, did a clearing operation in this one area to get rid of suspected rebels. And I visited the home of one house that was basically grenaded at night. And there was a family inside. One of the children died, and the mother and other child were injured. And this is something that's being questioned. Like, why is this happening now at the Spratlys? Why is this issue of the Mutual Defense Treaty being brought up now? And I think maybe that's something we can discuss as a group. But I'll leave my presentation at that. Thank you.
And the second concentrate on Spratlys, no? I think very grateful to Mikay Joe for his research, very informative, and also about this mining and all the other issues. I wish we could have another forum just for this.
One by one.
But ngayon we can concentrate on Spratlys. That's the more let's say, urgent issue at the time. And I'd like also to thank the organizers, the GASJ, for making me feel like I'm back in Diliman. This is the first serious get-together that I've attended since I arrived 2 months ago. Mahilig tayo sa social. It's more possible. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Friends, the content general.
Kalayaan Island Group, because that is where we have effective occupation, exercise of sovereignty, and all that, especially on the island of Pag-asa. Then, if that is the case, why are we talking about the Spratlys? We are not claiming other islands, are we? We are not claiming the Spratlys. We are only claiming the KIG, Kalayaan Island Group, which I believe is the main focus of the government's policy. If that is the case, then forget about Spratlys. Concentrate on Pag-asa or the Kalayaan Island Group to perhaps bolster our negotiating position. That's my first comment. If you agree, then we can proceed. Then you mentioned something about sharing, which I believe is the way to go. But you also mentioned that sharing must entail, of course, first determining really what is found in the Nansha Spratlys Islands area. If that were the case, we have to determine whether indeed there is oil and gas. What we have now are reports of corporations here and there, nothing really confirmed. The first serious attempt to establish whether there is really oil and gas was the seismic study. This was not probably very fruitful because it's become questionable. In any case, should we proceed that the basis of the issue in the Spratlys is oil and gas, then I ask, is there a similar case where it involves exactly the same situation? You mentioned about sharing these deposits. I wonder if you could perhaps explain further this concept of sharing, because I have an idea. And if I may just proceed, given another time, if you have given you an idea about sharing, may I be given the opportunity to expand on what my idea is?
Okay, with respect of Kalayaan Island, arguably the Philippines has a stronger claim because it has occupied the island, it's built an airstrip on the island, it has stationed troops together with the families in the island, and the island is run as a municipality of Palawan. Therefore, you can argue based on the Las Palmas case that there is a continuous display of effective authority over Kalayaan. But the problem with that is the Philippines' claim over Kalayaan and the others are overlapping. So it's hard to determine which is which owns this EEZ or which has this continental shelf. So it's rather difficult to determine that, and the UNCLOS does not provide clear guidelines as to how to delimit maritime boundaries in case of overlapping boundaries. So it's rather difficult. It will never happen, as I've said, because these are overlapping claims, considering that the islands are contiguous to each other. Some are submerged, some are coral, just rocks. Some are full islands like Calayan, but they are overlapping with each other. In terms of sharing, the latest example would be the Timor Sea Treaty signed by Australia and East Timor. It refers to a conflicting sovereignty claim over the seabed in the continental shelf on the Timor Sea between Northern Australia and East Timor. What they did was they entered into a sharing agreement, setting aside the sovereignty claim in the future of maybe when the oil is gone or when everything is gone, who cares about the sovereignty of the island? Maybe that's the reason why they just agreed to a sharing. And it's working now. East Timor has agreed to share of the benefits of that exploration in that part of the sea.
Okay. First, we agree that Pag-asa is ours, and that is what the President says. No other countries claim Pag-asa except China. Only China claims the whole of the Spratlys. We agree on that. Malaysia does not, Vietnam does not, Taiwan does not, Brunei does not, Malaysia does not. Only the Philippines claims KIG, and we have international law, international convention supporting our claim. So that is ours. We cannot go to ITLOS because, as you have said, there will be a problem. They simply will not agree to international arbitration or to the UNCLOS. So, patay tayo dyan. Now, let me share my idea about sharing. Actually, the idea about sharing about Timor-Leste and Indonesia should be present, actually. The more interesting case is this. In the Spratlys, you have 6 countries claiming deposits under the sea. We have mentioned the countries already. Sometime in the mid-1950s, I'm sure Attorney Rivera would remember this, you have a similar situation in Europe. In the Spratlys, you have oil and gas. In Europe, you have coal and steel. The area around the Ruhr Valley, Alsace-Lorraine, these areas bordering France, Germany, Benelux, and Italy, this used to be the arsenal of Europe, as they call it, because all the armor, all the steel came from that area, and this armor were the ones that fueled the conflicts between France and Germany. So what did these countries do? In 1955, they put up what you call the European Coal and Steel Community. Basically, the idea is, as far as sharing is concerned, is denationalize the natural resources. Nobody owns it. Put up some kind of a supranational authority that will have exclusive jurisdiction over these resources. Supranational meaning goes beyond national countries, national sovereignties. And it worked perfectly. Now there's perfect peace in the Ruhr Valley, Alsace-Lorraine, and the whole of Europe now is so peaceful. That idea became so successful, so much so that even Europe, as it is now, has integrated politically so rapidly out of this idea of sharing under a supranational agency controlling exclusively that particular deposit. In the case of Europe, coal and steel. In the case of Spratlys, oil and gas. The problem is, in the case of Spratlys, you have a dominant country. Whether you like it or not, you can argue about international law, you could argue about international law, that's in everything. The bottom line is that if you have no military power to support your claim, you're nothing. You cannot go to the court, so we have to play our game by sticking our claim. Only the KIG, only Pag-asa, and make that as kind of a negotiating posture, rather than claiming the whole of the Spratlys anyway. The last time that we claimed the territory, we lost. I mean Sabah. And now we're trying to claim the Spratlys and trying to claim also the Bintam rice. We are on an expansionist attitude. But really, when you come to think about it, can we maintain these areas? Just for some talk, because I'm going to my consul general.
Works out well because in the first place there are no overlapping claims in that area. You're talking of lands which are easily could be defined. Except in the sea, it's different.
No, conflict. Actually, that's why there were wars between Germany and France.
It's totally different when you.
I know how many times did Alsace-Lorraine exchange sovereignty between Germany and France? Twice or thrice. It moved from one country to
But it's
another.
totally different when we're talking of,
No, we're talking of sharing
of
and a
resources
supranational agency that we control.
in the seabed and subsoil
Yes.
of the sea, which is entirely different.
Well,
Okay.
just food
That
for
makes
thought.
it a little more complicated.
Just food for thought.
And there are several claimants too.
Where?
These are very interesting arguments, gentlemen, but we have to get
Yeah.
on with Monica. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mutesa.
Good evening,
Monica.
everybody. I just heard from that gentleman, and at least what I can take away from me after tonight is, if I really believe in whatever, if it's sovereignty, it's a personal thing. If you really believe in it, then let's all work together. Those people who want the same thing, let's see what we can do, right? That's a starting point. If anybody else has a different opinion, it doesn't have to be reconciled. If you believe on the same thing, you collaborate. Let's find people who want to be interested in the social issues or environment. It doesn't have to be one big umbrella. It's what's important with you and what you want to spend your time on to promote our cause, right?
I agree with that, Monica, as a moderator, but then when it comes to money, we could not agree on many things. Ricky, please.
Yeah, I was gonna, I think I'm going to the realm of speculation, but I was going to segue from Alex's last statement about this whole issue of resurrecting the mutual defense treaty between the United States and the Philippines. And there's all talks about political posturings and military posturings on the part of the United States. So basically my question to you, Joe, is how realistic is all this talk about a proxy war being fought? I'm beginning to think that we're back in the 1960s, the era of the Cold War.
You're probably right that this could be another Cold War. And you're probably right that it is already a U.S.-China proxy war on the Philippine territory, invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty, which is almost moribund. In the first place, there is no imminent attack, there is no invasion, so how can you invoke United States assistance in this case? But I agree that this is almost like the 1960s. This is the new Cold War. And I believe that the war of words between these competing states should stop. They should work out a diplomatic negotiation. That's the best thing that can happen. No one will take the risk of arbitration because no one is willing to get an unfavorable decision. So the only way out is for these countries to sit down together, negotiate multilaterally, and work out a joint exploration projects, sort of a joint development zone. Set aside all those sovereignty claims. They can do that.
But isn't it true that there's already a U.S. frigate, a Chinese frigate there?
I think that is all talk because there is no island which can hold a big airstrip for aircraft. So China has its own first aircraft. Imagine China, a member of the Permanent Council, and the only country which never had an aircraft carrier before. Thailand has its own aircraft carrier. This is the first time that it has its aircraft carrier. That's the only way to maintain a military hegemony over the region is to have an aircraft. What can we do? We don't have. We only have what? Papur-papuran o mga
Bamburap, maybe. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Assuming we have sovereignty over the Kalayaan, hypothetically, what is the potential area for exploration of oil within the limits according to the Convention of the Law of the Sea from the Kalayaan, from the perspective of the Kalayaan Island?
My personal viewpoint
So
is this is not a law of the sea dispute between the claimant countries. This is more of a territorial sovereignty dispute. Who owns these islands? Who has sovereignty over the islands? Once you settle that issue, that conundrum of who owns these islands, then you can apply the law of the sea.
I'm asking that question because I think presumably underneath all this talk, we are interested in this because of the potential for oil, oil development or oil exploration in the future. Should somebody from the Philippines, a national of the Philippines, have the capacity for exploiting it? So
I don't think we have the capacity. Mampalaya project, we entered into
we can get into some agreement with somebody who could have the capacity.
That's what will usually happen. Even China and Vietnam have already oil explorations in the region. To Crestone, Vietnam and China have already been drilling in the region. And how much more for the Philippines, which doesn't have the capability? Of course, we will enter into a contract with foreign corporations, but let's be guided by a constitution. That insofar as exploration of natural resources, that we are limited, that foreign investments should be limited to 40%. Well, what has happened to Mampalaya project?
No, yeah, but I'm not going into that. I'm just interested in the potential for oil exploration from the point of view of the assumed sovereignty over the Kalayaan Islands. I mean, within like 2 kilometers or whatever, you know.
But that's the problem, as I've said, because there are overlapping claims. There are overlapping claims between these competing states. Which country owns this EEZ? Which country owns this continental shelf? Because they're so contiguous.
Yeah,
and now you determine who has sovereign rights over the resources in the seabed and in the subsoil. We're not talking of the islands or the rocks on the ocean.
You know, this conversation reminds me also of my university days. I studied at Los Baños with Mount Makiling. You must have heard of Mount Makiling in the issue of the kaingineros. So the illegal farmers are there in the mountains, and I don't know, somehow it reminds me, there's no solution to all this, but everybody claims who owns. There was a time that I also wrote an essay. Who owns Mount Makiling? And now the question is, who owns Spratlys? Okay, so anybody else?
Just note, I have to go. I have to work at 9. So if anyone has a question for me, you can ask now.
Alex, please ask him before he runs away.
Okay,
Yes, please.
Okay, since Alex is leaving, my question first is for him. You seem to project that what's happening in the exploitation of these mining corporations will happen also in the exploration of the deposits of the Spratlys. To me, that is opposing our goal to have whatever legal claim we have on the Spratlys. So I think we should proceed on what legal rights we have on Spratlys, and hopefully the future will not repeat as the oil explorations, the mining exploration presently is happening in Marinduque. On the other hand, I appreciate your very graphic illustration of the exploitation of the foreign corporations in our country. We should fight that, and that's on another aspect. Now my second is. With all our expectations of these ASEAN countries to get into this fray, considering the fact that America now owes billions, trillions of dollars to China, don't you think that is a factor for America to call off? You know?
Not only that,
money talks, you know, money talks.
Not only that, the U.S. owes China its debt